Now, Asia's art market was the first to get hammered in the wake of the Lehman Brothers collapse a year ago. This weekend, Sotheby's launches the region's first major art auction since then. Sotheby's has set the expectations rather low, but an influx of Chinese money may change all of that. Bloomberg's Lee Min is here to tell us all about it. Lee Min, the last auction came just weeks after Lehman Brothers collapse. Yes. A year later, what are the expectations now? What are the trends?
The expectations are actually very, very good. Very, very upbeat mood in the market now. People are expecting the Chinese money, as you mentioned, to come in. Asia is pretty much the only bright spot in the art market right now. So we are expecting the mainland Chinese to go for the old stuff. Yeah, so now old is good, going for the antiques, going for the paintings. So Sotheby's has set Hong Kong $780 million target, which is the equivalent of about $100 million US. We expect them to exceed that.
Okay. Now, when we're looking back, let's bring in actually our guest, Stephen Davies here. Yeah. He was saying that in the year ahead, investors have to get imaginative. Steve, I wanted to ask you, for the average investor, is art a potential investment product out there? What do you think about it? Do you hear about it from your clients?
No. I mean, that's not to say that things like that don't fulfill a function within a portfolio, but certainly my own approach is that you buy something because you like it, not necessarily because you think you're going to make massive amount of money out of it. Having said that, Asian investors do like physical property, whether or not it comes to a residential unit in Hong Kong or Singapore or anywhere else. And if you've got a, excuse me, if you have a smart property, you need something smart to put on the wall, which is where this demand is coming from. But perhaps I could ask a question of my own, is that certainly my perception is that Asian investors have tended to focus on Asian art. Do you think that their tastes are now beginning to expand to include Western art and old masters as well?
Well, Stephen, it's very interesting that you asked that, because that is what I've been asking Christie's and Sotheby's as well, because that is a natural extension, isn't it? Since their markets are, in the doldrums right now, the Western markets, that is, a natural inference would be for them to divert some of the big name impressionists, your Monets, your Renoirs, your Hearsts, to this part of the world. But the short answer, Stephen, to your question is no. Not at this stage. They say when it comes to taste in art, or to use your words, what you want to put on the wall, the Chinese still very much prefer to buy their own stuff, their own antiques, especially those with a long and good appreciation of their own history and their own art, even contemporary art, for those with the appetite for risk at this point. It may take a while. It may take maybe a few more years of education, but until then, I think Western contemporary art, their markets, the Western art, their markets are confined to Europe and the US.
Let's take a look at one of the pieces that will be auctioned off. It's called the Lotus Red Fish from Sanyu, and this one actually kind of typifies some of the trends we're talking about. It's Asian, it seems to be well underpriced, and it's also not contemporary. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. Right now, you would recall, Caleb, that in 2007, Chinese contemporary art was all the rage in this part of the world. People were paying tens of millions of US dollars for works by living artists, people your age, in 30s, 40s, etc., living artists. But because of the crisis, people are now looking for sure bets, so to speak, i.e., artists of good repute, and there is, preferably deceased, with a good reputation, with no chance of replicating their works. So at this auction, you'll see that as well. And, old works will definitely have the highest bids.
Let's look at some stuff that's really old. You mentioned antiques at some point. A throne from an emperor, I think 200 years old, is going to be on auction. Obviously, there's a lot of scarcity in that market. Is that priced well? Who's buying those types of items?
Expect the mainland Chinese, essentially. What we are hearing in the market is there are a lot of good bargains at this auction because they have revised their prices down. Sotheby's, that is, to make sure that people do come to the auction. So I think you will find, if you are a connoisseur, you will find some good picks this time.
Okay. Let's bring in Stephen real quick. Stephen, we're going to have about a minute left here. Li-Min, you had a question for Steve?
Yeah. No, I did.
Okay,
I did before, but you asked it.
Okay, sorry. Didn't realize that. No problem. But Li-Min,
Okay,
we're happy to have you here.
I've got a quick question.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Which is basically
Stephen.
who is selling the stuff at auction? Does it tend to be foreign investors, or it's staying within the same marketplace?
Mm-hmm. The consignees are mainly Asians, the mainland Chinese owners. And there are some Western collectors as well. Usually Sotheby's and Christie's do not want to disclose who their consignees are, but I think it is a pretty good bet. It's a pretty sure bet if we were to count on the mainland Chinese as being the main consignees.
All right. Li-Min, thank you for the report. And Stephen, we
Welcome.
also want to thank our guest, Stephen Davies, for joining us today. Stephen Davies from Javelin Wealth Management and CEO. Thanks for coming in today. It was a pleasure, and we hope to see you again soon.